This time on Movie Reviews, we're going to be looking at the new science fiction film, The Predator. The Predator is a new film from director Shane Black and stars Boyd Holbrook, Trevante Rhodes, Jacob Tremblay, Olivia Munn, and Sterling K. Brown, and follows years later after the events of the first two Predator films, and is about a young boy who finds some alien technology of the Predators and accidentally starts an invasion of Earth. And soon his father, who's a soldier, gets involved and tries to kill the Predator with a ragtag team of other military officials. Now, I'm just going to say that I really wasn't excited for this film, and I'll say why. I've never watched any of the Predator movies. I've seen about maybe the last half of the first Predator film, and I don't even remember it that much. So, really, I'm not the audience for this movie, and I just kind of went into this completely blind, and what I got was a mess of a film. But a mess that I can say that I enjoyed a little bit. This film has a bunch of problems, and we'll get into that, but I think it has a lot of good moments, too, that a bunch of people really aren't talking about. I think a lot of people that are giving this movie negative reviews aren't really talking about the good stuff, and there is some really good stuff in it, which I'll go ahead and start with the good stuff. I think the relationship with the son and the father is incredibly good. Jacob Tremblay plays the son of Boyd Holbrook's character, who's the soldier, and he's kind of autistic, and he's just incredibly good, and the scenes with him in particular are just really sweet and good, and the relationship between them, when you see them on screen, they really feel like father and son, and they are the emotional crux of the film. They are really good together. I also think the action is really good. The cinematography really helps with these action scenes. Everything is very clearly shown. There's no shaky cam involved. It looks really good. It's a very pristine, clean-looking film, and the action scenes are a lot of fun, especially the opening action scene. That's a lot of fun, but there's some really good scenes later on in the film, particularly a scene where the government has gotten hold of a predator and it's inside their base, and eventually the predator gets loose and starts attacking everybody. And it's really well done. It's very tense and super violent. It was a really good standout scene in an otherwise underwhelming movie. Now, something I'm going to say here can be seen in the negatives that I'll give for the film, but for a little bit of the time, it's a bit of a positive. A bunch of people talk about how comedic this film is and that it's basically a comedy. I wouldn't go that far. This film is not a comedy, but it does have a lot of humor in it. And honestly, when I was watching the film about 30 minutes into the film, I really wasn't understanding what people were talking about when they said this movie was a comedy. Because, I mean, there's a joke here or there, but it really wasn't trying to be a comedy. In fact, a lot of the early jokes, I think, really work. Sterling K. Brown has some incredibly funny stuff to say, and I think it gets pushed to the side by some really obnoxious comedy later on in the film. If this was supposed to be a comedy, I really didn't have a problem with it being a comedy. I know that the original Predator and Predator 2 are science fiction, horror, action films, but that doesn't mean that this can't be. I mean, it's clearly trying to do its own thing while also being a sequel to these two films, and that's fine. However, I'm going to go into my negatives, and I'm going to talk about the comedy first off. Yes, the comedy works every now and then, but there's sometimes particularly 3 scenes that are incredibly obnoxious and annoying, and it comes to a point where they're trying too hard to be funny. There's moments where there's a joke and another joke and another joke and another joke, and it almost feels like they're just throwing it at you to see what lands, and really none of them do land, and it becomes more annoying than anything. They're just trying too hard with the comedy. And there's some jokes that just don't work, and one joke in particular that was just really offensive. There's a moment in the film where just one of the characters says in a joking manner about the main character's son who's autistic, and he calls him retarded. That really made me uncomfortable in the film. It was just out of place and wasn't funny at all, and was the most poor taste joke of the entire film. It was really bad, and that's a big problem. I can't believe Shane Black wrote that. It was just really bad. Also, here's another problem I have with the comedy overall, is if you're going to have some comedy and everything, and as much comedy as there is in this film, then make it a straight-up comedy if you want to. But here, it's really unfocused because it tries to be this violent action movie, but then it will just be comedic all of a sudden, and it will be seconds after each other, and it just doesn't work when you're seeing just violent stuff happening and then just a joke. And they're not even really like dark humor jokes, which I think would have worked better. They're just comedy jokes, and it's really bad and really distracting. I also didn't find any of the characters too likable, or at least just they were just very stock characters. The only characters I ended up liking were Boyd Holbrook and Jacob Tremblay, who I said before, their chemistry and just their relationship on screen is really good. Also, Trevante Rhodes gives a fun performance, but I mean, there's not really much to him. Olivia Munn is okay. I don't think she's that great of an actress to begin with, but she's fine in the role she's given, and she's part of a really good, intense scene earlier in the film, but that's about it. But honestly, my favorite character in the film is Sterling K. Brown, who is just, he's the bad guy of the film, and he's just hamming it up, and he's so good with his delivery, and he's honestly really funny. Anything he says was just incredibly funny, and I don't know, he's just got this quirk to him where, like, I don't know, he's chewing on gum this entire movie and he never stops. It's just, he's just really good in the film. I mean, these characters aren't deep or anything, but some of them are really good. Some of the actors give off pretty entertaining performances. And overall, I was entertained by the film, even when it had the lowest of lows. Just bad jokes, just awkward cuts. That's another thing. The film is very awkwardly edited at times, where it just kind of cuts. It just shows that the film is very messy, and it's really upsetting because there's some really brilliant moments in the film that I think are really good. As I said, the first 30 minutes of the film are incredibly fun. And honestly, there's moments of the rest of the film that are kind of fun. The film is really goofy, and I think it knows it's being goofy, which I'm completely fine with, but it just doesn't always work. I think the real deciding factor is, can I see myself watching this again? Yeah. I had enough fun in the film to where I think I could watch this again, just not anytime soon. Anyway, with all that said, I'm going to give The Predator a 6 out of 10. I really debated for a long time if I was going to give this a 5 or a 6, but I like the film enough to where it's a 6. Well, guys, I want to thank you for watching this review. Check back sometime later, and I'll have up my review of A Star is Born, the 1976 film, so look forward to that. And as always, with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.